how to throw a bowl. Once you've combed up and down and centered your clay, this is where you get to decide, is your mound of centered clay going to be a bowl, a cylinder, or a plate? So today I'm going to show you about a bowl. Your left hand is still the boss when we create the opening of your bowl. And the difference of a bowl and a cylinder is the bowl has a continuous curve. Now, depending on the type of bowl you're going to use, you want to think about the foot that you need. If you're going to fill a bowl with hot soup, you don't want a tiny little foot that it needs to balance on. What if it topples over and spills hot fluids on you? So you need to think about opening up, just like when we do a cylinder, opening the bottom. You've got to open it up so that your bowl has a wide enough foot to support the contents you put in it. When I open, this is where the difference is from a cylinder and a bowl. With a cylinder, I create a small opening that I try to keep narrow at the lip. The bowl, it's okay if the lip opens up a little bit. This is the same. I'm going to anchor up, lean into the clay to keep it centered. Without the boss hand, as I open, it can get off center. So this hand supports it. This hand's not the boss, so it anchors up. I'm connecting my thumb on top, and I'm going to take 2 fingers, start with my middle finger because it reaches the clay. Notice I have a wet sponge, so I can squeeze it as I need more liquid. And as this wheel is spinning pretty quickly, I'm just drilling downwards, allowing myself to have enough clay at the bottom to trim a foot. So if I only allow myself this much clay, I won't be able to trim too much of a foot. If you leave your clay too thick, then you'll have a lot to trim. So I have opened it about this deep. I'm going to check it and show you by cleaning off my needle tool, poking it through, take my finger where it meets the clay, pull that out, and that's about how much room I have left at the bottom of my bowl. So that's plenty for me to trim a foot. So now that I've opened my clay, this is when I have to establish the bottom. A lot of times students will just start pulling the clay here, and your foot is only this wide. So your coffee or your hot tea or your hot soup will only have a foot that big. So next step, you've opened, pull it back, establish how wide the bottom of your bowl will be. I'm anchored up, hands connected, and these fingers are going to pull back. And I'm going to put a sponge over it so I don't have to fight the friction. So I'm pulling this clay back, opening the bottom wide enough that it will be stable on a counter or a tabletop. And there, I've opened the bottom. I'm going to clean out my sponge so you can see. My inside doesn't quite look like a continuous curve. To me, it looks a little bit like this if I were to cut it open. So now that I've widened my foot to be this wide, so that's a lot more safer for it to stay steady on a table, I can now wring out my sponge, elbows against my body, locked in, hold this sponge, and kind of create that continuous curve. I'm going to press harder in the center, and then relax my pressure as I come over to the side. Harder, and then easy. And this can help establish that continuous curve. And if I hold on tight enough, I can go from 3 o'clock over to center and even pass through center and go over to 9 o'clock. If I hold on and just continue to form the continuous curve at the bottom, and this is also helping to compress those clay particles. Oh, potential spam. I forgot to. Okay, sorry, again. So I'm compressing the bottom to make sure it's a continuous curve, getting this cleaned out, elbows against my body, and making sure this time I do not want a 90-degree transition. I want it to be that continuous curve. So you can already see a difference. The bottom has the continuous curve, but also the lip is more open. Now I'm going to do a pull, just like a cylinder, where I'm going to squeeze that clay, but the difference is the right hand is now the boss. That's the same. That means I'm going to anchor up. Fingertip always starts on the bat. I put a wet sponge over that fingertip. This hand's going to start pushing that clay first. That's the same. The difference is the inside hand. For a cylinder, you're going to start right there, and you're going to pull up and in and let the outside hand be the boss. For a bowl, to create the continuous curve, the inside hand is actually going to start in the center of the bowl, and it's going to glide over, and then when it gets to right where that curve is happening, when it feels the thickness between the fingers, they're going to squeeze that clay out and up. So the inside hand is squeezing out, but now it's going to come up. So I'm not allowing the inside hand to press it out completely wide, because I'm making a bowl that I could scramble eggs in. And I was just talking about soup, but if you were to make a soup bowl too wide, it cools off too fast. Or if this was too wide, I couldn't scramble eggs. So again, boss hand is already squeezing that clay. You can see it moving. Inside hand starts at the center, it connects to my boss hand, it's gonna glide over, and when it feels that continuous curve, it's gonna press through the continuous curve, but then up. I'm not gonna keep pressing out. I'm gonna press through it, and then come up. So that inside hand kept that continuous curve, but now my outside hand is squeezing against that inside hand, and notice this little finger compressing all in one move. Got to the top, compress, rotate, 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 slow release. All right, I'm gonna compress this lip one more time, meaning I'm gonna clean these little fingers off, get them kind of wet, hold the lip right in front of me at 6 o'clock, one finger on the outside, one finger on the inside, a little water helps, and then this finger for my non-anchored hand, elbows are against my body, can touch my fingers and then the clay. And that just helps smooth things out depending on where I press. I put a sponge on it, I can round this lip out, I can make it more sharp. It's really up to me and the pressure I apply. So the key here, do I have a continuous curve? I'm gonna look at that. And then how is the thickness of my clay up here? A lot of times when I throw a bowl, it doesn't look like a bowl on the outside until I trim it. So I'm gonna do one more pull. Inside hand's gonna press out. And then now they're coming up. Outside hand's the boss. Fingertips gonna compress. Rotate, 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 slow release. So what you can see is a cylinder, it looks like. Balls are pretty vertical. However, when I cut through this, I'm gonna go ahead and smooth it out, get the water out, and really allow myself to work on this continuous curve. My pressure can really establish that it is a little deeper in the center, and then as I come over to the edge, I'm relaxing that pressure, compressing this lip. Now, all this clay down here, you could use your wooden knife to get a head start. Hold it like a pencil in the middle of the tool, not down there, but however you hold a pencil, whatever's comfortable in the middle. Both hands will hold on, elbows against your body, and from the inside, I can see where the transition happens. So from looking above, I can hold this wooden knife tool really firm and just make a mark, just make a line where that transition happens. Now for a cylinder, I cut straight down, but for here, I want to undercut and start the curve of the bowl. Sometimes a little water in that groove will help the wood knife slide. So I'm holding on tight, and I'm just letting the wheel turn. And as the wheel turns, I'm pushing down a little more, down a little more, down a little more. I don't know if you can see it over there. So until I reach the back. So there I am, I just reached the back. Take my needle tool, cut through this little band of clay, and then underneath. Remove this, this can get recycled. And then it still looks like a cylinder on the outside, but let's cut it in half. And you can see the transition to see if we have a continuous curve. Now, when you're throwing a bowl, you want to ask yourself 2 questions before you're done. Is there a continuous curve? Check. Is the top inch as thin as you want it to be? Is this the form you want it to be? Everything down here we can trim off and shape up later when we trim. But we're going to have a place to attach our bowl to the wheel when we trim. So we won't be able to remove clay from this portion. So I'm checking, is this top portion thin enough, and do I have a continuous curve? All right, now you don't have to keep cutting your bowls in half like I wanted you to do with the cylinder. However, do it if you'd like. And then I'm going to cut this in half. A little bit of a mess. And then let's take a look at the transition. See if we can put that one there. So when this is open up, see how that's a continuous curve? It's a little bit more in the vertical, so you can always make that however you want. But we're avoiding that flat bottom like we had for the cylinder. We want that follow through continuous curve here. And I kind of squeeze it when I cut it open. But also you're looking for this top portion to be as thin as you want it, because ultimately when this part gets leather hard, we'll wire cut it, we'll flip it upside down, and we'll remove the clay from the bottom to create the foot that we want, and to trim the shape and remove some of this thickness. So when you're throwing continuous curve, is it as thin enough as you want it at the top? So stay tuned for how to trim. Hope this helped with how to throw a bowl. Remember to let that inside hand create that continuous curve. What's happening here is instead of starting right here sharp for a cylinder, you're going to start on the inside, and as it comes over, it's going to push over, out, and then they come up. Over, out, and then they come up to create that continuous curve on the inside. All right, see y'all for plates.